The new chapter today, that is general anesthetics. Coming to the outline of the chapter, we shall cover the definition of general anesthetics, the mechanism of general anesthesia, that is what is the mechanism of action which they follow, then the stages of anesthesia. Next comes the pharmacokinetics of only the inhalational type of anesthetics, then the elimination. Next point to be covered is the second gas effect and diffusion hypoxia. Next is the techniques of inhalation of the anesthetic, that is how they are administered, the inhalation type of anesthetics. Next we shall cover the properties of an ideal anesthetic, the classification. Then comes the individual drugs under inhalational anesthetics, individual drugs under intravenous anesthetics, which are the two classes into which the anesthetics are divided into. Next is the small point that is conscious sedation. Next is the complications of the general anesthesia, the drug interactions which are encountered when general anesthetics are administered along with the other type of drugs, and the last part is the pre-anesthetic medication. So to start with the definition of general anesthetic, which are also abbreviated as GA for general anesthetic, just like LA stands for local anesthetic. So general anesthetics, these are the drugs which produce the reversible loss of all the sensations as well as the consciousness. Okay, so here all the sensations are lost plus the consciousness is also lost. So which is a greater or which is a major difference between the local anesthetic and the general anesthetic. In case of local anesthetic, we have seen that the consciousness is not lost or it is maintained. But here in case of general anesthetics, the consciousness is also lost. Okay, along with all these sensations, and whole body is involved over here. So there are certain cardinal features of general anesthesia. These include the loss of all these sensations, and out of all these sensations which are lost, the main one which is getting affected, or the main modality which is getting affected over here is the pain. Okay, next is the sleep is induced. Okay, so unconsciousness is produced over here. Okay, and amnesia, that is during anesthesia you will not be able to recall what was happening. So the amnesia means a temporary loss of memory. So you will not know what was going on when you were under the influence of the anesthesia. Next cardinal feature is immobility. That is, in case if there is any surgical stimulus which is given, so there will be totally immobility will be produced. That is, the person will not make any kind of movement. So the person will not respond towards any kind of stimulus, and muscle relaxation also will be produced. Then there will be also abolition of the somatic and autonomic reflexes. So reflexes meaning those which are mediated through the spinal cord. Like for example, if there is a hot surface and if by accident if you touch that hot surface, okay, so what will happen? You will withdraw that hand very quickly. So that's a reflex action. So all these somatic and autonomic reflexes are abolished by the general anesthetic. Now, in modern practice, that is nowadays, a concept of balanced anesthesia has come into picture. That is, there is a use of a number of anesthetic at a time. Okay, so there is not a one particular anesthetic which is used. That is, a single anesthetic will not be used in most of the cases, but more than one. Okay, that is, a group of anesthetics will be used over here to achieve the desired general anesthesia. Okay, maybe say one potent drug is used along with another one. Okay, because their actions are additive, maybe they are combined because of that. Okay, that could be one of the reasons. Sometimes it is induced by one drug and it may be maintained, that anesthesia is maintained by using another drug. Okay, so likewise there are combination of anesthetics which are used at a time, and that phenomenon is known as balanced anesthesia. Next, coming to the mechanism of general anesthesia, as such it was not precisely known, okay, but these two scientists, Mayer and Overton, in 1901, they pointed out that there is a parallelism, there is a direct parallelism between lipid water partition coefficient of that particular general anesthetic, okay, and their anesthetic potency. Okay, so greater the lipid water partition coefficient, greater is the anesthetic potency. That's what they had found out, and they came up with a concept known as minimal alveolar concentration, which is also abbreviated as MAC. Now, what is this MAC or minimal alveolar concentration? As the name implies, minimal alveolar concentration, which means that minimum amount of your anesthetic to be present in the alveoli. Okay, so this MAC means it is the lowest concentration of the anesthetic which is supposed to be present in your alveoli. Okay, so that minimum amount of the anesthetic to be present in alveoli, which is needed to produce immobility in response to a painful stimulus. Like, say for example, surgical incision. If you give a surgical incision, there should be total immobility produced in that person. That is, a person should not show any kind of response towards this painful stimulus, and this is supposed to be shown at this concentration in 50% of individual. Like, for example, you are administering a particular concentration of your anesthetic, general anesthetic, in say 100 individuals. So out of that, at least 50 individuals should show immobility towards any kind of painful stimulus. So at what concentration this immobility is produced towards this painful stimulus in 50% of the individuals, that concentration is known as the minimal alveolar concentration. So it is, it is a measure of potency of the inhalational anesthetic. Okay, so only those anesthetics which are administered through inhalational route, either it may be a gas or a vapor. So the MAC determines the potency of that particular general anesthetic. Okay, so the lower the MAC, the more potent is your general anesthetic. Okay. So there is a parallelism in between these, MAC as well as your oil gas partition coefficient. However, the drawback with this, now minimal alveolar concentration does not give any idea about the mechanism by which the general anesthetic is acting. Okay, so it is just giving the parallelism towards the ability of your anesthetic to enter the CNS and attain the sufficient concentration. That is, it will only determine the after how long your general anesthetic will reach its site of action. Okay, so it's that factor which will tell you the onset of action, but actual mechanism of action is not clear over here. Okay, so later on it was found out that the general anesthetics, they act through different molecular mechanisms. Okay, and various components of the anesthetic state, like say for example immobility is there. Okay, then loss of reflexes is there. Okay, unconsciousness, amnesia. So these various components, the cardinal features which we have seen of the anesthesia, so these involve the discrete locus, okay, so loci on the cerebrospinal axis. So action of your general anesthetic at different areas of your brain, that determines what type of outcome will be seen, okay, or which modality is getting affected. Okay, let's say, see for example, a few examples are given over here. Unconsciousness is seen because of the action of your general anesthetic on the thalamus or reticular activating system. Amnesia which is produced, that's because of the action on the hippocampus. Immobility on the surgical stimulation, this is seen because of the action on the spinal cord. So likewise, various areas may be involved in your CNS which may determine the various cardinal features which are seen upon administration of your general anesthetic. Now coming to the actual mechanisms of action. Okay, so recently it has been found that general anesthetics, they act through ligand gated ion channels. That is, they control these ligand gated ion channels. So that these are the major target for the anesthetic action. So several type of ligand gated ion channels are found in the CNS. As you are already aware of, there are chloride channels. Okay, chloride channel basically, calcium channel, sodium channel. So likewise there are many types of channels. Okay, so out of these, the GABA receptor gated chloride channel, okay, the one which we had seen under the sedative hypnotic chapter. Okay, this picture is also familiar to you all. Okay, showing the mechanism of action of barbiturates and the benzodiazepines. Okay, so they act also through potentiation of the GABA action. That is, GABA binding to its receptor, and it will result in opening of the channel. Okay, so why this chloride channel opens is because of binding of GABA to its receptor. Okay, so this is a ligand gated chloride channel, and here GABA is controlling this particular channel. So only when GABA binds to its receptor, this channel will open. Okay, so this is the mechanism of action for barbiturates and benzodiazepines. So similar mechanism, because benzodiazepines and barbiturates are also used as anesthetics. Okay, so they act by controlling this chloride channel. So out of all the channels, this is the important one which is getting affected. So many of the inhalational anesthetics, the barbiturates, benzodiazepines, as we have already seen under the mechanism of action in sedative hypnotic chapter, propofol also. So all of them act by potentiating the action of inhibitory transmitter GABA. GABA is an inhibitory transmitter. You are already aware of this. Okay, so this GABA, it opens the chloride channel. So how these general anesthetics are acting? These are acting by potentiating the action of GABA. So they promote the GABA binding to its receptor, and chloride ion channel is opening. That's how they are producing the anesthetic effect. Okay, so each of these anesthetics, the examples which we have given, so they interact with their own specific receptors. Okay, so on this chloride ion channel, there are specific receptors located, okay, through which these drugs are acting. Say for example, barbiturate have its own receptor. Okay, this is a barbiturate receptor. Then the benzodiazepine also has its own receptor. Again, hardly a few drugs can directly act on this, or they can directly stimulate the or activate the chloride channel. Say for example, barbiturates, okay, can only at higher concentrations themselves open the channel. Okay, but rest of the drugs, they have only facilitatory action. That is, they will act through GABA. GABA binding to its receptor is promoted, and that's how the chloride channel is open. Okay. Then there are certain drugs which are also acting through this glycine. Okay, so now glycine is another inhibitory transmitter, just like GABA is an inhibitory transmitter. So glycine is another inhibitory transmitter which also activates the chloride channel. So there are glycine gated chloride channels also in the spinal cord and the medulla. So certain drugs like barbiturates, propofol, and many inhalational anesthetic, they act by augmenting this glycine gated chloride channel. Okay, so what they will do, they will enhance the action of glycine, chloride channels will open, and that's how they will produce the inhibitory action. Okay, because of this action, they block the responsiveness to the painful stimuli. Okay, so because of this, immobility, the cardinal, one of the cardinal feature, that is immobility towards any painful stimuli, okay, which is one of the cardinal feature of the anesthetic state. This is produced through the action on the glycine. Okay, now there are certain other fluorinated anesthetics and barbiturates. Okay, in addition, like barbiturates also act through other mechanisms, like through glycine also, and GABA mediated chloride channels also. So in addition to this, certain fluorinated anesthetics and barbiturates, they also inhibited the neuronal cation channel gated by the nicotinic cholinergic receptor. Just like over here, glycine is mediating this chloride channel. So likewise, there are nicotinic chlorine receptors also which are gating certain cation channels. So these are inhibited by certain fluorinated anesthetics and barbiturates. So because of this inhibition of these cation channel which are gated by nicotinic receptor, actions like analgesia and amnesia will be produced. Okay, so the anesthetics also have analgesic property which is mediated through this mechanism. Even amnesia, that is the loss of memory, okay, or the loss of recall of what was happening, also mediated through this mechanism. Then next, coming to the mechanism of action of nitrous oxide and ketamine. Okay, now these two drugs, they do not act through GABA or glycine gated chloride channel, rather they act through inhibition of the excitatory NMDA type of glutamate receptor. So these are the excitatory receptor. Remember these two, these are inhibitory transmitter. Okay, so these are the inhibitory transmitter, GABA and the glycine. So their action was augmented by certain other inhalational anesthetics. But here nitrous oxide and ketamine, they are acting by inhibiting the excitatory NMDA type of glutamate receptor. Okay, so because of the inhibition of this, okay, this NMDA type of glutamate receptor, calcium selective cation channels in the neurons, okay, these are inhibited. Okay, because these drugs nitrous oxide and ketamine are inhibiting the NMDA type of glutamate receptor, these are mediating the action through certain calcium selective cation channels. So these are also getting inhibited. That's how nitrous oxide and ketamine is producing their anesthetic action. Okay. Now the general anesthetics, they basically produce neuronal hyperpolarization. Now what is this hyperpolarization? This is the one. Now this is a picture of action potential. These pictures I have taken from the internet. Okay, so here this is the action potential of a nerve. So generally what happens on there is a resting membrane potential. So whenever there is a particular stimulus, the potential will increase. So supposing if there is a opening of certain ion channels, it will result in flow of the ions across the membrane and the membrane potential will change. So from minus 70, which is the resting membrane potential, it going towards the positive end. And as you are already aware of, there is a threshold level of excitation. That is, only when this potential crosses this threshold level is the depolarization will take place. Okay. So here, if at all there is any stimulus, certain ion channels will open, it will go towards the positive end, and once this threshold is crossed, it will result in the depolarization phase. This is a depolarization phase mainly produced due to the opening of the sodium ion channels. Okay, and after this, repolarization will take place, that is potassium ion channels will open and it will result in the repolarization, that is the potential will come back to its resting potential. But what happens over here? Over here hyperpolarization means what? Here the potential is going below the resting membrane potential. So this phenomenon is known as hyperpolarization. So this hyperpolarization which is produced by general anesthetics, that's because of the activation of specific type of potassium channels. So additional opening of these potassium ion channels is resulting in the drop of potential even below the resting potential, and this is known as hyperpolarization. So because of this hyperpolarization is produced, it will take time for it to come back to its resting state, and that's how it is resulting in the prevention of conduct of certain stimulus or impulses. Okay, so rather here general anesthetic, it is inhibiting the presynaptic transmitter release as well as the postsynaptic activation. Okay, so because of this hyperpolarization, what is happening is the release of neurotransmitter from the presynaptic neuron. Now this is a presynaptic neuron and this is a postsynaptic neuron. You are already aware of that, the two neurons in a sequence, okay, which carry certain signals. So both the neurons are not connected to each other. There is no physical contact between the two neurons, but there is a gap known as the synapse, and the signal travels from one neuron to another neuron, that is the presynaptic neuron, because this is present before the synapse. Okay, and this is postsynaptic, meaning it is present after the synapse. So signal coming from this presynaptic neuron is carried towards the postsynaptic neuron by the neurotransmitters, certain neurotransmitters which are released in the synaptic gland. So they will go and bind to the receptor on the postsynaptic neuron and they will stimulate the postsynaptic neuron. So here general anesthetic, what they are doing, they are inhibiting the presynaptic transmitter release. So this release of transmitter is not taking place. So that is why postsynaptic neuron is not getting activated. So that's how it is actually showing the action. Whereas if you can recall the action of local anesthetic, they act by preventing the conduction of signal along the axon of a neuron. They are not affecting the transmission of the signal from one neuron to another neuron. Okay, that's how local anesthetic is acting. They act on the axon of a particular neuron and the signal is not conducted. Whereas general anesthetic, they act by depressing the synaptic transmission. That is, signal is not transmitted along the synapse, okay, to the next neuron. This is how the general anesthetics act. Then coming to the stages of anesthesia. This is another important topic. Okay, so the stages of anesthesia. What exactly is happening as the anesthesia deepens? Okay, now when a general anesthetic is administered, actually there is a irregularly descending depression of the CNS. Okay, meaning if you consider the brain, the higher functions are lost first, followed by the loss of lower areas of the functions of the lower areas of the brain. Okay, so slowly the anesthesia spreads to the higher areas of your brain and then it progresses towards the lower area of the brain. Whereas if you consider the spinal cord, okay, in case of spinal cord, this is a picture showing all the nerves, okay, which are emerging from the spinal cord. So if you consider the spinal cord, over here the lower segments are affected first. So these segments, the area to which these segments are supplying, these neurons are supplying, those areas will get anesthetized first. Then comes the lumbar, then comes the thoracic segments, then comes the cervical segments. Okay, so involvement is from the lower segments towards the higher segments in case of spinal cord. Whereas in case of brain, the higher areas are affected first, then comes the lower areas. And the medulla oblongata, which actually contains all the vital centers, this is the last to get affected. Okay, out of all entire, if you consider entire CNS, medulla is the last one to get affected. Okay, now coming back to the stages of anesthesia, this is the scientist Guidel in 1920. He described that the anesthesia can be divided into 4 stages. Okay, so he described these stages of anesthesia using ether anesthesia. After administering ether, a peculiar 4 stages can be seen, and there are specific changes which are taking place during each stage. Okay, so again he divided the 3rd stage. He divided into four main stages, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and out of that the 3rd stage he divided into 4 planes. Okay, so this can be seen with the ether anesthesia. Okay, but nowadays it is not seen because as we have seen that balanced anesthesia is used. That is, a combination of anesthetics is used. Several pre-anesthetic medications are used. Then combination of drugs are also used to facilitate the action of general anesthetics. Say certain drugs may not have analgesic property. They don't have muscle relaxant property. So certain drugs are used as an adjuvant. Okay, so combination of drugs are used so that all these stages may not be observable in modern anesthesia, okay, or balanced anesthesia. Okay, coming to the actual stages of anesthesia. Now before going to the description of each stage, I shall describe what this picture means. Okay, so this with the help of this diagram we are going to explain all the stages. So here are the names of the stages: stage 1, 2, 3 and 4, and the 3rd stage is divided into plane 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so now in the description we are going to see what exactly is happening during each stage. That is, what is happening to your respiration, that is thoracic respiration as well as abdominal respiration. Now thoracic respiration meaning the respiration which is carried out with the help of intercostal muscles. Okay, and abdominal respiration meaning the respiration which is carried out with the help of diaphragm. Now both are important. Actually intercostal muscles and diaphragm both are important during the respiration. Okay, so now let's see what changes are taking place with the thoracic and abdominal respiration. Then comes the ocular movement, the eye movements, what is happening to the eye movements as the stages are progressing, what is happening to the pupil size during various stages, what is happening to the reflexes like eyelid, pharyngeal reflex. Okay, in like supposing if you are inserting some kind of intubation, pharyngeal reflex will be seen. Okay, that is laryngeal spasm will be produced and you will resist the intubation. So that's a pharyngeal reflex. Corneal reflex, meaning the touch reflex. If you touch your eye, your eyes will blink. So that is a corneal reflex. Then comes the light reflex. That means if you direct a torch, pupil size will reduce. So what is happening to this? Light reflex. Okay, so reflexes are also getting affected during anesthesia. Then skeletal muscle tone. As I have told you that skeletal muscles have a basic tone. Okay, so what is happening to their basal tone as the anesthesia progresses? Okay, whether it is maintained normal, it increases, decreases. Then comes the effects on BP also and the heart rate also. Okay, whether it is maintained normal, whether it is increasing or decreasing as the depth of anesthesia is increased. And the last column tells you about the uses of a particular stage. So these are the uses of stage 1. Nil is written in stage 2. So no procedures to be carried out. Okay, and here also. So this column describes the uses of the particular stage of anesthesia. Now coming to the stage 1, that is stage of analgesia. Okay, now here this stage begins with the administration of the anesthetic, that is anesthetic inhalation. So once you start the inhalation of anesthetic, begins the stage 1, that is stage of analgesia, and it lasts up to the loss of consciousness. So once you start administering the anesthetic till the person falls unconscious is the stage 1, that is stage of analgesia. Now as the name implies, stage of analgesia, meaning over here pain is progressively abolished. So pain is not felt as the stage ends. Okay, but during this stage the person is conscious, the patient is conscious. Okay, because the stage ends when the person loses the consciousness. So during this stage the person is conscious, can hear, see and feel a dream-like state. And amnesia develops, that is loss of memory will be seen at the end of this stage. Reflexes and respiration, yes, they are maintained normal. Here you can see they are normal. Okay, the respiration is also normal. If you can see the rhythm is normal over here. Though some minor operations like labor or incisions or minor operations can be carried out, but it is of limited use. Okay, major surgeries cannot be carried out. Then comes the stage 2, that is stage of delirium. Okay, so over here this stage starts from the loss of consciousness to beginning of the regular respiration. Okay, so here if you can see at the end of this stage, respiration again becomes normal. That means during this stage respiration is becoming irregular. Okay, so once the respiration becomes regular again, okay, back again, that means the stage of delirium is over. Now during this stage apparent excitement is seen, that is the patient may shout, struggle, hold the breath. Muscle tone, if you can see here, it is increasing, jaws are tightly closed, breathing becomes jerky and irregular over here. Vomiting sensation or vomiting may be produced, involuntary micturition and defecation may be seen, that is passage of urine and feces, involuntary passage may be seen. So that's why bowel evacuation is done before surgeries are done actually. Okay, then heart rate and BP may rise. You can see over here the BP and the heart rate, there is a bulge, that means heart rate and BP is increasing. Pupils are dilated over here because of the sympathetic stimulation. Okay, so if you can see all the deleterious effects over here, eyes are showing some roving movements over here. Okay, so this stage is not an ideal one to carry out any surgeries, so nil is written over here, that means it is not used for any kind of operative procedures. Okay, then comes the third stage, that is surgical anesthesia. Okay, now this stage extends from onset of regular respiration. Here respiration has become normal. So delirium ends when the respiration becomes normal. So from here starts the third stage, that is surgical anesthesia. So it extends from onset of regular respiration to cessation of spontaneous breathing, that is stoppage of breathing, comes the stage 3. Okay, and it is divided into 4 planes. Now let us see what happens in individual plane. Plane 1 shows roving eyeballs. If you can see over here, there is roving eyeball. There is a specific movement of the eyeballs, and this plane ends when this roving eyeball movement stops. Eyes become fixed. That means plane 1 is over. Plane 2, loss of corneal and laryngeal reflex. If you can see over here, these reflexes are lost during plane 2. Okay, plane 3 indicates, it is indicated by pupil starts dilating. Okay, so here in case of plane 3, from here onwards the pupils will start dilating and the light reflex is also lost. And during plane 4, the intercostal muscle paralysis will take place. Okay, so here if you can see, as the depth is increasing, the rate of respiration is reducing. Okay, so over here shallow abdominal respiration will be continued. If you can see, the abdominal respiration is little bit maintained, but we are losing the thoracic respiration, and that too later on the thoracic respiration also lags behind the abdominal respiration. If you can see, the frequency is not matching with the abdominal respiration, so thoracic respiration is lagging behind. Okay, progressively the muscle tone, okay, that is also decreasing. Then the BP is also falling over here. Heart rate is however increased, okay, as the depth of this anesthesia is increased. And if you can see that most of the surgical operations are carried out in this. However, deeper planes should not be opted for. Okay, occasionally reached now, these plane 3 and 4. Okay, because it can be highly dangerous over here. Plane 3 and plane 4, your respiration is getting affected, so it can be highly dangerous. Next is your medullary paralysis. Okay, medullary paralysis starts with cessation of breathing, that is stoppage of breathing, to failure of circulation and death. So this medullary paralysis should never be opted for, because over here pupils are totally dilated, your muscles are totally flabby, BP drops and the person may even die. So this should not be attempted. Now many of these modalities have disappeared nowadays because of the use of pre-anesthetic medication like atropine. Pupillary changes, heart rate changes may not be seen because of the morphine. Respiration and pupillary changes which we see during different stages are not produced. Muscle relaxants are used, so changes in the muscle tone or respiration or eye movements and reflexes, these also will not be seen. Okay, so now how will the anesthetist come to know which stage is actually reached? So anesthetist has to observe very carefully. Okay, so if there is eyelash reflex, if it is maintained and if the patient is making shallow movements, that means stage 2 has not reached. Still the person is in stage 1, so operative procedures should not be taken up. Then the loss of response to painful stimuli. So for example, if you press the orbit, okay, nasal border of the orbit, and if there is no movement, stage 3 has reached and you can begin with the surgeries. If at all there is any kind of reflex increase in the respiration or BP rises or other effect upon the incision if it is given, or if the insertion of any endotracheal tube is resisted, okay, or induces the cough or vomiting or laryngospasm, if at all there is tears in the eyes, if tears appear upon incision, or if passive inflation is resisted, that means anesthesia is light. Okay, so you need more deeper layers. Okay, so how you will ensure that the deep anesthesia is reached? Fall in BP, cardiac and respiratory depression. These are the signs of deep anesthesia and you can begin with your surgeries. Okay, so nowadays anesthesia is kept light and additional drugs like muscle relaxants and anesthetics are given. Okay, so anesthesia is kept light and several drugs in the form of pre-anesthetic medication are given. So a combination of one or more than one anesthetic is used. Say for example, 2 inhalational anesthetics are combined, nitrous oxide, isoflurane. So their MACs will be additive, so lower concentrations will be required, because dose response relationship of the inhaled anesthetic is very steep. That means little increase in concentration will result in steep increase in the action. So you should be very careful while administering the inhalational anesthetic. Probably combinations are used so that their concentrations can be lowered. Generally 1.5 MAC should not be exceeded, because 2 to 3 MAC is found to be lethal. The person may even die. And if the MAC drops to 0.4, that means the person will gain back the consciousness.